We're going to be talking about privacy. We're going to be talking about the surveillance state, the state of surveillance, all of these things. And I think usually when I give presentations, I start with, basically I spend half the talk trying to convince people that privacy is important. And I feel like with this audience, I probably don't need to do that. Like who knows someone who has been kidnapped or had their finger chopped off because they were targeted for crypto? Oh, I do. Who knows someone who has ever wanted to create a pseudonymous social media account so that they could freely express themselves? Yeah, probably a lot of people. Who knows someone who's had a dangerous ex-lover and they feel like they need to protect themselves? Yeah? Who knows someone who has ever had political opinions that might make them a target because they're outside of mainstream thought? Privacy is important, and we understand that it's the foundation of a free society. So what I wanted to focus this talk on was, first of all, dispelling the myth that surveillance is monolithic and we can't get away from it, because I think that's one of the most successful psyops in history. We have been told to believe that there's no such thing as privacy. Privacy is dead. Who's heard that? Privacy is dead, or that it's not important. I have nothing to hide. We've probably all heard that too. And it's been a very successful marketing campaign. The result, if you look around, is a bunch of people throwing their hands up in the air and saying, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's everywhere. My privacy's gone. My information's out there. This is a giant myth. There's so much that you can do. So what I want to do in this talk is explain some specific ways that surveillance happens in your phone or in your other devices. Because if we think of surveillance as this amorphous, it's surveillance, it's monolithic, it's pervasive, it's everywhere, we can't fight it. If we name it and we explain the actual methods that it occurs by, we can actually do something about it. So let's talk about specifics, and then let's talk about takeaways and things that you can be doing today. And there's a spectrum, right? I just want to explain privacy is not anonymity. These are not the same things. Privacy helps with anonymity, but they're not the same thing. You don't need to stop revealing everything about yourself. You don't need to never tell anyone anything. You don't need to hide all of your personal information from every single company and entity. Privacy is about choice. Privacy is about your right to decide for yourself who gets your information. It's your ability to choose which companies you want to associate with, which parts of yourself you want to reveal. Privacy is just about reclaiming that choice. And we can have a much better time at reclaiming choice if, again, we understand the mechanisms that surveillance is going on. If we are unaware of how our digital devices work, we can't make informed decisions that help us protect ourselves. So, let's start with some kind of crazy ways that surveillance is going on in your phone. We understand cell tower tracking, right? Put your hand up if you don't understand that mechanism. Okay, so everyone gets that, right? Your baseband processor is connecting to cell towers in order to give you connectivity. It has to. So this is something to be aware of, because if someone has your cell number, they can literally find your exact location in real time. Did you know that? Yeah, because your number, when it connects to these cell towers, is recorded in something called the home location registry. So they're basically these databases that say, okay, this is the closest cell tower that Naomi has been to, and that's how we're going to route calls to her. And so there is a record of my number, and if you have KYC'd with your phone, of your name and associated details in these home location registries. So that's something to be aware of when we carry around our cell phones. That's kind of a giant privacy leak. Who has a cell number that's public that maybe a company knows about? Everyone put your hand up. You've all been in a data breach and all of your numbers are on the dark web. All right, so if someone knows your number, they can just look for it on the dark web. They can find your real-time location. Now, how exact is this? Well, it depends where you are. If you're in a rural area, there aren't as many cell towers. So it might know that that's the closest cell tower. You're kind of in this general proximity. They know that you're in Lancaster right now. If you're in New York City, They know to a foot distance exactly where you are because there are so many cell towers. And not only that, there are things called femtocells. So it's not just the legitimate infrastructure we need to worry about that are recording us. Femtocells are fake cell towers. They're things that people are setting up on every building in New York City or any other city that you visit. They're things that are set up by private companies. They're things that are illegally set up by law enforcement. And again, it just allows another mechanism for either intercepting calls or for tracking people. So cell numbers are a thing that we will talk about when it comes to protecting ourselves. Let's talk about apps in your phone. Who has one app or more in your phone that you haven't used in the last 6 months? Everyone should put their hand up. Come on. And who remembers what permissions every app in their phone were given? All right, cite all of the permissions. No, I actually, with this crowd, I wouldn't be surprised if there were people who were like, no, I've memorized the permissions. So there's a great book by a journalist named Byron Tao. I really encourage you to read it. It talks about the history of data brokers. Data brokers is another one of these kind of vague terms that's like, what is a data broker even? They broker data, I guess. That would make sense. But like, what are they collecting? How are they collecting it? Byron Tao's book looks at the 4 epochs of data brokers as he explains them. And so he starts off how all of this started, with like the giant LexisNexuses of the world, and how they were basically just scraping public databases. They wanted to know who had a boat license, so they wanted to know who had a fishing license or a gun license or whatever other information might be available out there. And they're aggregating all of this, and they're working with initially insurance providers to try to make sure, okay, is this premium right? Because this is what we know about Naomi. She's driving fast boats everywhere. Maybe we should increase her premium. And so there are companies like this that emerged that just scraped that data. But our lives increasingly moved to the internet, so there was more and more data for them to scrape. So Byron walks you through how this kind of evolved, how we get to the stage of social media. Suddenly, all of our Twitter posts are scraped. They're tagged, they're analyzed. It's like, oh, Naomi talks a lot about freedom. Tag her as a problem person. Let's keep an eye on her. And now we're in this new era, which I want to talk about. And just before we get to this new era, keep in mind that these surveillance mechanisms only work when people don't know about them. And that's really problematic. Because if we talk about the things we're starting to know about, which is apps in our phone, which I'll get back to, then you have to presume that the entities who are collecting our data are already working on the next thing. And right now, it's probably seems like a conspiracy thing, and in 10 years, it'll be taken for granted that, yes, this is a mechanism for data collection. So let's talk about one of these mechanisms that a decade ago started to be implemented. Now we're really starting to understand, okay, this is a thing. And we don't quite know what the next thing is yet, because research into this field is very limited. So the apps in your phone. Where do we even start, right? So first of all, let's just talk about legitimate apps where you've given certain permissions and you're like, this company wants to know every device on your home network. Why do they need to know that? They need to know your location, even though it's a calculator. They want access to your contacts list. We'll talk about that leakage method in a second. But there's this kind of insidious underground market when it comes to apps. So let's say that I was a developer and I created a Compass app because I'm like, yeah, this is a cool side project. I'm just going to make this app and it'll take me a weekend. But everyone loves the Compass app. It gets 2 million downloads. Suddenly everyone's using this Compass app because everyone really wants to know where north is because it's really important. And so suddenly there are 2 million downloads of this app. Invariably, that developer will get a call or an email from someone saying, hey, we'd like to put this SDK in your app. and just like some lines of code. We just want to put this here. We're an analytics company, and we'll pay you a couple of $1,000s a month if you just put these lines of code. We just want to track metrics. And this developer goes from having a side project that makes them no money, but is very popular, feels good. But there's maintenance, they have to pay for upkeep, there's a server they have to maintain, there's the cost of fixing bugs every time a new version of Android comes out. So they say, yeah, I'd like a couple of $1,000s a month, and they're just going to collect analytics, whatever. So they will say yes. You should presume that every app in your phone has lines of code that the developers did not intentionally or initially intend to put in there. And you should presume that the developer probably doesn't even know what those lines of code do. Now, what do we know about these lines of code? Well, Byron sued the government, did a bunch of FOIA requests to try to get some information, because this stuff is really opaque. It's really hard. You can't reverse engineer this stuff. They're querying libraries that you don't even have access to. So it's very hard to get a gauge on what these suspicious lines of code are doing that are in our apps. So one of the things he discovered, and this is just one app that he was able to dig into, there was an app that was targeted to the Muslim population, and it was wildly popular, 100 million downloads or something huge like that. And he found that there was an SDK in this app that was downloaded by so many people that was allowing, all contacts lists, social graph to be shared, location data, all of these things. And then he traced it back and found that it was owned by a shell company, which was owned by the US government. So the US government was putting SDKs in the apps of certain demographics so that they could be targeted. Again, one example. Think of all the apps we just talked about on your phone that you don't even remember putting there, that you don't even remember the last time you used, you don't remember what permissions they gave, and you have no idea what code is going on in those apps. So that's another attack vector you should be aware of, is that every app you add to your phone increases your attack surface. And you should be mindful of that. If you're out and you see a leaf and you're like, I wonder what plant that is, you don't need to download an app to take a picture of it to identify the plant. And if you do, you can delete that app afterwards. So don't just keep apps on your phone because it's I went to Walmart once and they asked for an app, so I decided to keep it. Be judicious about the apps on your phone. So then that's another tracking mechanism you should be aware of in your phones. And then we've got things like all of the radio frequencies. So, BLE, if you've got, who has Bluetooth turned on right now? You all have Bluetooth turned on right now, except that guy, because he's great. So follow that guy's lead. Wi-Fi, who has their Wi-Fi turned on right now? There are all kinds of, you know what, I love this crowd. I'm seeing so many people who are like, not me. My Wi-Fi is off. These are tracking tools that are used to granularly figure out exactly where you are. There are a few things to cover when we're talking about BLE and Wi-Fi. So let's start with BLE, so Bluetooth Low Energy. This is something that if your Bluetooth is turned on and you're in a shopping center, they can tell which aisle you have stopped briefly at. It's that granular. So they know exactly which products you're looking at so that they know exactly what to target you with the next time that you go to the store, or in email, if you have the Walmart app on your phone, then they know exactly who you are. There are all kinds of ways that they can figure out who you are, but they are figuring out what you're looking at, which products you're buying, and all that kind of thing. It's also used just in a lot of city streets. People want to understand congestion. It's used in airports. It can tell, if you're too far away from your gate and you're not going to make it in time. There are all kinds of tools that entities are using right now to see where specific individuals are. And then Wi-Fi is really interesting because not only is it like a triangulation tool, but it's also who's heard of the phrase war driving? Let me explain the phrase war driving. So there's this whole community of people, and they're really fun. They will basically drive around or walk around places like DEF CON or conferences with giant antennas that are picking up signals just to collect them. And they will collect SSIDs, so like Wi-Fi names, Naomi's Wi-Fi, Jones hotspot, whatever. And they're collecting that, and there's like a database. And so I first learnt about this many, many years ago. It was one of the first videos I ever did on my channel. It got like over 1 million views immediately because it turns out people at the time, a lot of people didn't know this stuff was going on. But Snowden tweeted out something where he said that he doesn't use Wi-Fi because there are publicly accessible maps of access points. And I was like, what's an access point? Well, I didn't know anything. And so I just started deep diving in all this. And I found this site called wiggle.net. Super interesting site. You can go to this site and you can look up Naomi's Wi-Fi. And then you see, oh, these are all of the MAC addresses that are connected to Naomi's Wi-Fi. And then, this MAC address is also seen here at a PorcFest conference, 2019. Okay, so she was probably there. And then you can start to map people's location based on these databases. Now, Wiggle is actually a public service company. They created this for this kind of war-driving community. They want to populate these maps that show all of these different Wi-Fi access points and things. But they want to do it so that they can inform people about how much privacy they're giving away when they use Wi-Fi. They want to demonstrate, hey, this is the kind of information that can be scraped from you leaving on your Wi-Fi at all times and signaling out. And if you think about this public service website, and then you think about, well, wait a second, I keep my Wi-Fi on, and Google and Apple at any given time are showing, oh, these are all of the Wi-Fi signals in range. And this is the signal strength. And as you move around, the signal strength will change. And now you're a little closer to this one. We are war driving for Google and Apple. We are collecting all of this information about every Wi-Fi access point we're seeing as we drive around, which helps to map everyone's location who has their Wi-Fi turned on. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So that's, and then also, phones don't do it as much these days, but phones used to actively beacon out your list of SSIDs as well. That's how your phone knows to automatically connect to things, right? So if you arrive home and your phone has magically connected to your home Wi-Fi, how does it know to do that? It's because for the last 12 hours since you left, it's been pinging out saying, Naomi's Wi-Fi, are you nearby? Nope, okay. Naomi's Wi-Fi, are you nearby? And it's just been doing that constantly, which means that, I probably have a unique fingerprint of all of the Wi-Fi SSIDs that I've ever connected to. And it's probably like Naomi's Wi-Fi, PorcFest 2019, this cafe I really like, whatever it is. But it's just like broadcasting this unique fingerprint everywhere I go. Phones don't quite work like that anymore. There are mechanisms like they'll send out wildcards, and it's complicated, but it's not a thing that you need to worry about as much anymore, but you're still war driving for Apple and Google if you leave your Wi-Fi on. So another tracking tool you should be aware of. So we've got all of these things in our phones. We've got, unique identifiers. Who heard about the giant breach that just happened, where it's the biggest of all time? I can't even remember the number, but it was like 10 billion, unique, was it 10 billion? Where it's like Google was hacked and Facebook was hacked and LinkedIn was hacked. Like if you haven't changed your password this morning, the thing you're going to do after you leave this talk is go and change your password on all of these accounts. So data breaches is another mechanism where you can be tracked and monitored, because you're probably giving your same email address and your same telephone number to every service that you're using. And then every time one of these breaches happens, people can search for your identifiers and correlate all of the different activities and services that you've signed up for. So that's bad. That's bad. So let's talk about solutions, right? We've kind of got an overview of some of the crazy stuff going on in our devices. The first thing that I would recommend that you do is attack probably your cell number. It's not the first thing that most people talk about. And I don't want to talk about low-hanging fruit. I don't want to talk about change your browser, don't use Chrome, don't use Google search. We can discuss that. But I want to talk about, if your location is something that you're worried about being tracked, let's figure out how to mitigate that. So cell is the first thing I would do. Who has had their cell number for over a decade? It is in every dark market breach ever. I think the former CEO of Cisco has a great quote where he says there are two types of companies in the world, those that have been hacked and those that don't yet know that they've been hacked. So just be aware that every time you've bought a pair of shoes on the internet or gone to a doctor's office or gone to a government website or signed into your children's school account or whatever, and you've used that same cell number as an identifier, all of that information is correlatable. So, what do you do with a number that has been out there for a decade? Everyone knows your number now. What, do you just get rid of your number and now no one can contact you? Well, luckily, we don't have to do that. So we talked about home location registries, right? That's where your cell number is stored. So that, you're talking to cell towers, and in order to know which cell tower you're closest to, they're keeping a record of the people who've connected to that tower in the home location registry. That only applies to cell numbers. There is no home location registry for VoIP numbers. And although the two are completely compatible, they operate in different systems and they connect to each other through a switch. So what you can do with your existing number, if you just port it to a VoIP provider, that number can no longer be used to look up your exact location. That's pretty cool. So what are some VoIP providers? Well, Google is one. Now, we hate Google for privacy. Everyone boo, boo, is bad. But, yeah, that's good. There's a lot of booing. That motorcycle's really into this talk. All right. They're actually really good for security and one of the few services that you can lock down with a YubiKey. So this is one of the few instances that I might recommend Google for something, and I'll explain why. It's going to be counterintuitive if you look at the number of videos on my channel that's like, Google's bad for privacy. So SIM porting is a real threat. If someone knows your number, it is trivially easy to port that number and gain control over someone's phone. Trivially easy. I have a friend who, a lot of crypto, and he was with, I think it was T-Mobile, maybe AT&T, one of the T companies, there are a lot of them. And he had a flag on his account saying, never under any circumstances port this number. And what does that flag do? That gives a mild suggestion to whichever employee is controlling that account to say, consider never porting this. Now you give that employee $10 and you're like, can you port this number? Here's $10, and they probably will. The industry of number porting is sophisticated, and it's filled with people who've been corrupted, and your number can easily be ported. It doesn't matter how many flags you put on your account. So this person had all of his crypto stolen. He sued the company, and then they put like an extra red flag on his account and said, definitely never port this number, otherwise you'll be in giant trouble. And then it happened again, and he lost even more crypto. Because these things don't work. These little flags that are mild suggestions for employees are easily overrun if you deal with someone who's been corrupted within an organization, and there are lots of them. So, because number porting is an issue and your number is public that you've had for the last decade, how do you protect it, right? If you can port it to VoIP, what's to stop someone else just porting it back out of VoIP and into something else that they can control? So that's why I like Google Voice. So Google Voice, you pay a one-time fee, it's $20, and you never have to pay for that number again. You don't have to pay to upkeep it, you don't have to pay for anything. That is going to be a receiving-only number. If anyone calls, you can either forward it to your new phone, or you can have it go to voicemail and transcribed and emailed to you. If someone sends you a message, that's just going to be emailed to you. And you can lock it down with a YubiKey. Now the only way that someone can port that number is if they have access to a physical key, because you have locked down your account. So that is why I recommend it, because number porting is such a huge issue. Now, there are other services you could choose instead. So I use a service called MySudo. I pay for 9 numbers a month per account, which is the maximum that you could pay for. And I silo these numbers. So how does it work? Am I like carrying around 9 different phones? It's like something rings and I'm like, oh, wrong phone. Where's the other one? No. Like in your phone, you have a calling app right now, right? You all know which app to press if you want to call someone. Same works with a VoIP caller. Every number, all of these 9 numbers get routed to this same app. So if I get a message, this one app will ding and say, hey, you got a message in this app, and I just look at the message. If the number calls, then it just calls to that app, and I can just answer the phone. So it's very, very simple. They all go to the same place. I've done it a bit more complicated because I have a bunch of different profiles and I have a bunch of different accounts across profiles. I wouldn't recommend you start with that. I recommend you just start with securing your cell number and getting onto a VoIP app. And now you can start to silo your information. Let's say it's $15 a month, which includes all messages, all calls. That's all you pay. That's the maximum you pay to use this VoIP provider, MySudo. And you get 9 numbers. So what I do is I silo these numbers across different purposes. So I'll have one number for banking, another number for government things, another number for friends and family, another number that might be public-facing for my company, and I'll just figure out what use cases. And that way, if someone's calling a number that's associated just with purchases, I'm not going to answer it because it's spam. If someone's calling a government number, I generally don't answer it, but it's also usually spam. These things are broadcast out, they're sold to data brokers. If someone calls my friends and family number, I answer it, because now I know who's on the other side or what purpose, because I only give that number to specific people. So the cell number thing is something I recommend you think about prioritizing, because I think it's an important thing to focus on. Another service that I use is called cloaked.com. I just generate a new number for every service I use. So if I just want to burn a number, if I'm buying someone flowers, or I'm signing up for Partyful and they require numbers, which is really annoying, you can't see people's invitations. I just generate a one-time use number. Doesn't have to be one-time use, that's just how I use Cloaked. So look into these different platforms that are out there and figure out what works for you. But I do recommend you just initially porting your existing number so you still have access to it. You don't want to give it up completely. If you've had this number for a long time, you want people to still be able to contact you on it. And then when they contact you on this receiving only, like Google or whatever you've chosen, you can direct them to one of your new methods. Say, ooh, I've changed numbers, this is my new one. You can just migrate people over that way. So let's talk about email, another unique identifier. This is something that you should definitely be locking down because of all these data breaches that we talked about. You don't want people correlating, where you take your car to get serviced with where your kids go to school, with where your doctor's office is, with where your home address is, with everything else you've ever done in your life. So you should be using email aliases. Again, you don't need a separate email account for every address. You can use a single address. I personally like Proton Mail, but there are lots of tools that you can use. And inside that account, you can just generate a unique address for every merchant you do business with. This has an added benefit. I know who's selling my data now, because if I create a unique address for every merchant that I deal with, and I buy something from Betty's Florist, and then suddenly an airline company is emailing me at Betty's Florist. I'm like, Betty, you were very naughty. You stole that email address. So it helps me also keep track of that. And if Betty is like, hey, I'm going to send you a bunch of spam, check out our new planes and flowers deal or something, then I can be like, listen, Betty sent me too much mail. This was just a one-time use thing. You can just toggle it off, and you no longer get spam in your inbox associated with that email. Keeps things really clean. So Proton Mail has an inbuilt alias system that you can use where you can just generate aliases. They also, Simple Login is a company that they purchased, so you could also use them. It's kind of, they still run Simple Login, but they've basically incorporated all of the functionality of Simple Login in their own internal system now. But both are really cool tools that you can use to just generate one-time aliases. And what this does is it actually makes it harder for data brokers to correlate your activities and build profiles on you, which is really important. So we've talked about cell numbers and emails, which I think is something that you can lock down. Let's talk about purchases, right? Now, in my ideal world, we'd be using crypto for everything, and it would be a privacy-focused crypto. It would be none of this, public information on the blockchain, and now you're going to be kidnapped and have your finger chopped off. So it's not an ideal world. It is hard to live on crypto. Joel Valenzuela is a great person to follow if you want tips on how to do that, if you're ready to give up your bank account. But I will warn you that it is difficult. So I want to talk to you about alternative methods that will help just at least mitigate some of that data collection. So, and by the way, how much time do I have? Because I have not been keen. Oh, great. Wait. Did I have half an hour or an hour? Wonderful. All right, well, let's go through things. And again, I usually get a lot of questions in these, so feel free to pepper me if you're like, clarifying question, did not understand that, say it again. Absolutely jump in. So the financial system is a surveillance system. It has been co-opted as an investigatory tool. It has been deputized as basically a law enforcement agency that is keeping tabs on your purchases and reporting all of your activity to the government. And this happens slowly, unfortunately, and it's like a frog in boiling water, and we all kind of got used to it, and now we live in this era where every swipe of our cards, every time we tap into an app on our phone, every time we use our bank account, all of our information is collected and shared with third parties and governments. And a lot of people don't realize that actually their bank is selling their information. That's something you should be aware of. They're allowed to, and the government is also demanding that they hand over the information to them. So a lot of people collecting your financial information. Again, very sensitive data. It shows where you do your grocery shopping, where you buy your adult goods, where your kids go to school, where your home address is, because it's associated with, your billing address. There are so many ways that your financial information is potentially making you more vulnerable. So you want to clamp that down. How do you clamp it down when the entire financial system has been co-opted as a surveillance tool? It's really hard. So again, let's explore the spectrum of options. First of all, cash. It's great. Cash, you just use it in a store. You don't need every entity knowing every time you buy a coffee or what your daily habits are. Or, just now I was so delighted. I pay for parking at PorcFest. I don't need the government knowing that I'm at PorcFest. I just don't need them having that information. So you just hand over the cash. You get your $30 2-day parking pass and you're golden. So try to use cash and think about how you can incorporate that in your everyday life. I used to find it annoying because the difference between counting out pennies and just swiping a card, it could give you a bit of anxiety to be at the front of the queue and you're counting out cash and people are waiting and you're like, I'm so sorry, I know I've got a $1 bill here, but for some reason America makes all of their banknotes the same color so no one knows what anything is. Give me a second. I now relish it. I now take it as an opportunity to show, remind people what's possible. I love paying for things in cash. And every time I do, I feel like a little bit radical. I feel like, yeah, no one knows I bought that matcha latte. I feel empowered. But honestly, I guarantee you, if you just try to use cash places, I think you'll get, especially this crowd, you'll get a little ping of, I feel really good. That was another data point that no one got. It actually feels nice. Try it out. Just try it out. Maybe make a resolution to every Saturday, it's all cash Saturday or something like that. And on Saturdays, you're just going to use cash. I think that it is helpful on multiple accounts. Number one, it's helpful for you at a personal level. You are cutting down the amount of information that you're giving out there. You're cutting out the amount of information that data brokers are correlating about you, sharing with the government. You're cutting down the ability for people to build profiles on you, figure out what sort of activities you enjoy, what part of the political spectrum you're on, all of these things. That's good. But you're helping other people too. Because who has gone into a store recently and seen a sign that says no cash accepted? Boo, yeah. It's getting more and more. Australia is like a totalitarian hellhole. So the last time I went to Australia, and I can say that as an Australian, you can all say it too, I give you all permission. It is a totalitarian hellhole. So the last time I went there, I tried to spend cash at so many places. And there was this, it wasn't even apologetic that they didn't accept it. very self-righteous and, no, we don't have any change. I'm like, okay, can I give you exact change? It's like, no, we don't accept cash anymore. Like, or I'd need like a penny or something, a cent in Australia change. I'd be like, sorry, we don't have any change. It's like, you can keep the cent, it's fine. There was just this aura of, they don't recognize what happens when your ability to make private transactions disappears. They don't understand how dangerous that could be for a society in terms of personal freedoms, you being able to make choices without them being monitored and tracked. And it was so normalized. That was the scary thing to me. And if you look all over the world, you're starting to see the threshold of what's legally allowed to be purchased in cash getting lower and lower. So I think, in different places across the EU, it's like 1,000 euros, I think, in Italy. So you want to buy a computer for cash? No, that's going to be illegal there. In the United States, we still are allowed to pay for things with cash, and we should exercise that right or it will disappear. And if we don't value it and use cash at stores, it will disappear there too, just from the volition of the store. The store will just say, well, no one's using cash, let's just not accept it anymore. So by you actually exercising your right to use cash, you're helping everyone be able to have that option. And some people need it. Some people actually really need to be able to hide. Maybe they're an investigative journalist that's being targeted. Maybe they're a whistleblower. Maybe they are a marginalized group. Maybe they have fringe political beliefs. Maybe they're just someone who, wants to exercise their autonomy. There are people who need this tool, and if we let it disappear, I think society will be worse off. We all benefit from those who are doing hard and important work, who are, battling powerful entities, who are speaking truth to power. We benefit from all these people doing things, but they rely on privacy to do their job safely. We can help them. We can help them by renormalizing tools that help them do their job safely, and we benefit as a result. So cash, again, this wonderful entity where it helps you with your personal data, it's helping everyone be more safe, more private, more free. So consider it. Cash Saturday, everyone. Who wants to commit to Cash Saturday or something like that once a week? Anyone want to try out Cash? You guys are great. Cash every day, everyone. There's a couple at the front. They're great. They're great. So that's one way, obviously, that you can help escape the financial panopticon. Now, there are things called masked credit cards. Let's understand what privacy you are getting and what you aren't. Anything that uses digital rails in our existing financial infrastructure is a surveillance tool. And there's nothing you can do about that because we've formalized KYC with the Patriot Act. We have deputized banks as law enforcement agencies with the Annunzio Wiley Anti-Money Laundering Act. We destroyed financial privacy with the Bank Secrecy Act. There are all kinds of regulatory hurdles that have been baked in that stop us from using the system privately. But you still get to decide who gets your data. Now, what a masked credit card does is it says that instead of you handing over your home address, your billing address to every merchant that you do business with, you can actually just use one company. They will mask the card. You can use any billing address with merchants, and it will still go through. You can use any name on the card, and it will still be approved. Now, you have to KYC with privacy.com, which is an example of a masked card service. There are lots of masked card services. MySudo offers them as well. There are different tools that you can use, but if you want to use these tools, you will be KYC'd. They will take your government documents. They will know exactly who you are. But part of their privacy policy is we're not going to sell this data, which is definitely a step up from all of the people out there who are collecting your data and selling it. So I like services like this because I don't want every merchant knowing my real name and my home address. I just don't give it out anymore. So every time I make a purchase, I use a masked credit card. I use generally single-purpose cards. So I'll just whip up a new card, click a button, give them that number, and I'm good. You can do all kinds of things with these Mastercard services. You could do like a single-use purchase where the card closes immediately after. Now, what does that mean? It means that if your card gets out there in a data breach, you're not going to be robbed of all your money and spend a year fighting the bank trying to get that reimbursed. That's a great security tool. That's going to, protect your financial assets. So you can also lock them to a merchant. So, for example, if I have a recurring purchase at reallycoolcatpictures.com, and every month I want that cat picture, I can just link one of these cards to this site, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to go back in and do it manually. But no one else, like if Really Cool Dog Pictures comes along and it's like, we're going to steal your number and charge you, it'll be like, nah, it's locked to this single merchant there, only cat pictures for us. So that's another cool tool. It means that I can purchase things without merchants aggregating those profiles on me. So instead of knowing that Naomi Brockwell purchased all of these things and they can see exactly what I'm buying, Bob Smith is purchasing things. So I highly recommend that you start looking into MasterCards for everyday purchases, but also look into crypto. You would actually be surprised the number of places you can purchase things for crypto these days. And not just your local coffee shop might not accept it, but they might if you ask them to. In New Hampshire, there's been huge success in getting people to accept cryptocurrency. You have to keep using it, though. You'll notice that there are ebbs and flows. There'll be like a peak of everyone's accepting crypto, no one's accepting crypto. Like it's on us to keep these systems going, give these merchants support, because we're the ones who understand these tools. But there are third parties. So services like Flexa or Bitrefill, where you can pay with crypto and they will give you it works kind of like a gift card situation where they'll give you a card for the exact amount that you put in, or sometimes you might buy like a $10 card, $100 card. So basically you can spend your crypto and spend it at a bunch of different stores that don't even accept crypto themselves through these intermediaries, which is pretty cool. You can start trying out some of these services, like Chipotle is a great place where you can spend Zcash, for example, using the Flexa app. Bitrefill is a great place that allows you to use other currencies. You can pay for your phone bill for using cryptocurrency through something like that. So try out these different tools and see what works for you. And again, it's just nice to support the businesses that are trying to keep us more free. If we don't use them, there's no one supporting them. There's no one, giving them revenue. They go out of business pretty quick. As we've seen over the last, 12 years or however long crypto has been popularized. We have these waves of people adopt things, they stop adopting it, the services disappear. So it's on us to kind of keep these things going. All right, let's talk about home address. Whew. We give our home address to everyone. It's terrible, right? And there are some things you can't get away from. So we'll talk about those last. Let's talk about what you can get away from. If you're buying things off Amazon, you don't need to give them your home address. You can give them a PMB, so a post mail box. There are different kinds of post mail boxes. Let me explain the difference. So a PO box is a government-run mail box where you can purchase a box and things will arrive there. But there are some downsides of using a PO box. Some people won't ship to a PO box. And so I think, there's compatibility issues depending on which service is sending the product. So PO boxes are great. I highly recommend you have one so that you don't have to, give people your home address. You can even set up forwarding, honestly, at the PO box and have things routed to your home if you really want to. Or you can just, go and pick it up manually. But either way, what you're protecting against is every entity you do business with, every merchant having your home address. You don't want that. You have no idea who these people are. You have no idea who's behind these companies. You have no idea how they're using this data. And you have no idea whether they might themselves be hacked and now this entry in their database is out there for a free-for-all and someone might target you. So PO boxes are great, but there are all kinds of private mail forwarders. I really like the smaller ones. So in most towns, there's some kind of a mail forwarder that you can use. And they're not PO boxes. They will give you either a PMB and then a number, or they will give you, a hash at a number. And everyone will send to those. You won't have any issues with people saying, oh, it's a PO box, we can't ship there. No, everyone can ship to one of these services. So I really, really, really like them. You will be KYC'd. It's like a government rule that if someone operates as a mail forwarder, you have to give them your address. So you will be in their database. If you want to completely cut the linkage, I can't recommend you do anything illegal, but I have noticed anecdotally that there are ways for you to be more flexible with the address that you give to the private mail forwarder, which I definitely don't recommend you do if it goes against any prevailing laws. Great. So look into mail forwarders and see, start to utilize them in your daily life so that you don't have to give everyone your home address. So we've talked about cell numbers to VoIP. We've talked about emails using aliases, so that all that stuff's not tied together. We've talked about home addresses that you don't want to give out. We've talked about the financial infrastructure. So these are really huge changes you can make in your life that will make a huge, huge difference to people being able to locate you physically. Now, I mentioned that with home addresses, there are some entities that you have to give your home address to. There's no skirting that. So what are some examples? Like internet providers and utilities companies, and if you own a house, maybe there's like taxes being sent there. So what do we do in those situations? All right, so you would have noticed like the BOI reports recently. There was, who knows about the BOI reporting requirements that are coming into place? It's kind of like, basically LLCs used to be a vehicle for protecting your assets, and then the government said, nope, you can't protect anything in your life. We're going to make it so that all the information about these LLCs are public. But they've been going back and forth. Like there have been, courts that have said, no, this is unconstitutional. The Treasury can't just demand all this information. Then they're like, it is perfectly constitutional. We're demanding it. And so the BOI reporting that the Treasury tried to put in place is kind of in this limbo state. It's like they're requiring it, but they're not quite enforcing that they're requiring it because there are a lot of pending court cases around the constitutionality of it. So even though you can still create LLCs privately in some places while these BOI reporting requirements are still kind of pending, we don't know which direction they're going to go in. So let's talk about a different vehicle that you can still use, which is a trust. Now, revocable trust allows you to move assets into the trust. Maybe it's a house, maybe it's a car. And trusts are these weird things where you have like a trust document that explains all of the details of the trust, but then you have a certificate of a trust, it's like a redacted version. So they can't really see what's in it. It's just kind of a few lines. And that trust certificate is a really great vehicle. So what you can do if you need to protect yourself and your location is to move assets into a trust. Now, the entities you do business with and what is public-facing on like deeds, websites, and government databases, it does give away information about that trust. The trustee is the publicly facing person. Now, the trustee is not the owner of the assets. The trustee is whoever you make the trustee, which is great, because you can have in your trust document, Naomi is the owner of these things. She definitely owns that, and then you can create a certificate that says, this is a trust that exists, and the public-facing trustee that is responsible for this trust is such and such lawyer, or such and such accountant, or such and such best friend, or someone unrelated to who owns the assets. So that's a vehicle you can look into. If you're a high-risk person that is worried about utility companies selling your data, because they're all selling your data. Utilities companies are one of the most egregious when it comes to selling your data. So yes, they are giving that information to third parties, and it's ending up on people's search websites. So if you're a highly targeted person who wants to protect that information, you can use a vehicle like a trust. You can move your property into that, and you could have the public-facing trustee be someone other than yourself. Now, keep in mind that any taxes that are sent according to that, any fees, like licensing fees for the car, whatever official documents are sent, they're going to be directed to the trustee, and the trustee is responsible for dealing with these things. So make sure it's someone that you trust and you can work with. You can also sign a private agreement with the trustee, whereby you fire them and replace yourself as a trustee, but then never update the government databases that are public-facing. So you still have a document that says this person is a trustee, but you fired them and you have a notarized form that you both sign that says, yeah, they're no longer trustee, I fired them, I'm the new trustee. You will want to look into the legalities of not keeping the government up to date with exactly who is the correct trustee. And make sure that you follow the law, everyone, because you don't want to be behind in those record updates. So that's a vehicle that you could look into as well. All right, so we've got a lot of vehicles and things that we've got to do here. This really is focused on higher risk people just people who really value their autonomy and just are tired of their home address being found easily everywhere on the internet. And these are things that you can do to really mask that exact location. If we're talking about general data collection, there are way easier things you could be doing, right? There are so many things you can do to protect yourself. So like your browser, stop using Chrome. Great, you've just solved 50% of your data collection woes. Stop using Google search. I personally like Brave browser, and I like Brave Search, but there's a website called privacytests.org. It compares all of the privacy statistics across different popular browsers. You can choose which one you guys like. Mulvad browser also has very similar ratings to the Brave browser, so they're a great tool. You want to be using a VPN. This will mask your IP address from every company that you're doing business with online. Every website you visit will basically see your IP address. And the IP address, although it's not technically like a geographically pinned thing, these days IP addresses have been pretty much mapped geographically. So if someone knows your IP address, they know your location. So you don't need to give your location to every website that you interact with. VPNs are great for that. VPNs are treacherous territory, so make sure you're using a good one. I would say the industry is overrun with scams, so tread carefully. You want to use a good VPN. I personally like Mulvad. I like Proton VPN. Be very careful of all of the VPNs where you see a ton of affiliate links where it's like, you get 60% of every purchase that someone uses this code or whatever. Like, where are they getting that money? Like, a lot of these VPNs are just data collection tools. They're just shell companies for collecting all your information. Some of them are outright malicious. They're collecting keystrokes. They're logging your information. So be really careful when choosing your VPN. There are lots of low-hanging fruit. You should not be using SMS. You should be using end-to-end encrypted messengers. I highly recommend Signal. You just want to choose the messages that have the least amount of metadata associated. You don't want people mapping your social graph. And you want to keep the content of your messages private as well. Like there's so much more we could go into. We've only got 10 minutes left, so I want to kind of just take a pause. We've covered a lot. I want to see if there are specific questions, because if you have a question, then other people probably have a similar question. Anyone have anything? Otherwise, I will keep rambling. Yeah. Shout with your opera voice, or the microphone, either way.
Do you know of any VoIP providers that allow everything, including payment privacy, anonymous sign up, that would work with a phone with Graphene OS on it? Because I'd prefer to pay with Monero. That way it's private and not have to provide any information that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, so there are some niggly things to keep in mind about the VoIP providers that I mentioned. So MySudo currently only works with in-app purchases. So you have to buy it through the Google Play Store or the Apple App App Store. Once you have that, you then migrate it to Graphene. So because you can't like buy things through your store there, you have to set it up on one of these devices, and you just back it up, which actually is good because this is a messenger that you won't be able to regain access to easily. Having an on-site backup instead of using their backup service is going to be helpful for you. So I have a backup of all my MySudo accounts on other devices, and then I use it on my Graphene phone. I just connect it there. So when it comes to payments there, I've had a lot of issues like buying things anonymously through the Google Play Store and the Apple Store. They generally don't like MasterCards or gift cards and things. Sometimes it works, so play around, but it's been difficult for me. MySudo are switching to being able to purchase plans off their website this year. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Soon you will be able to just purchase on the website and put it directly on your Graphene phone, which will be great. Cloaked, I didn't have to give them any private information. I purchased my plan directly through their website. I was able to use a MasterCard. You could look into, using cryptocurrency and buying like a gift card or one of those temporary Visa cards, and that could be a way that you could use crypto anonymously, use a card, and then sign up for a plan. I didn't give them any identifiable information about me, so I used a fake name. I used an alias like email. I didn't associate my billing address, any of that. So they're some things that I'd recommend.
Okay, and then I had one more question.
Well, let's keep going through the line just to keep it moving, but feel free to stay there.
Hi, Naomi. Thank you for the talk today. I know it's kind of like a normie question, but we talked about a lot of different ways of preserving our privacy. But I assume there are a lot of us here who have kind of just put our names, phone numbers, credit cards, and all our accounts. And how do you recommend us transitioning over to a more productive way of using these services for probably for all our future services and uses? But then how do we tackle the other accounts that we have in the past?
But we'll say that again because there were a lot of cars passing. I think I missed.
So basically, a lot of us here may not be using the right privacy-preserving tools.
So you're saying we've got a backlog of
Yes.
digital exhaust. How do we clean it up?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so the phone number, we talked about that. To clean that up, move it to VoIP, and at least that can no longer be used for location tracking. Email, I just migrated over. I had a Gmail account for a decade, and as people start to email there, and I don't want to use Gmail anymore, I just respond to them from my new account at Proton. I have a bunch of custom domains there. I manage them all through Proton Mail through the same account. It's very easy, and now I have a more professional front as well. Instead of Gmail at gmail.com, I can have that nbtv.media or whatever I want to use. Just migrate people over slowly, and then you can just stop using that, and then that decreases the amount of data that Google is able to collect about you. The fewer emails you're getting to your inbox there, the fewer things for them to analyze and add to your social graph, etc. Again, it really is, Proton is actually an amazing tool. You could ingest your entire Gmail history with the click of a button, right? And now suddenly that is protected with zero-access encryption, and anyone who is also using the Proton ecosystem, all your emails are end-to-end encrypted. I really recommend that you do that. And then you can just delete your emails from Google. Obviously, they're still going to have access to it on the back end, but if your account gets hacked, hackers won't be able to see existing emails there. And as you migrate everyone over, that's just less information coming into Google in the first place. You can do the same thing with your calendar. Click of a button, you ingest your entire Gmail calendar into an end-to-end encrypted ecosystem, which is amazing because you don't want Google to have access to everywhere you've ever been for the last decade, everywhere you're planning to be. All of it maps, your habits and exact locations. You've got contact information. It's giving away information about all the people you've connected with as well. So just click a button, ingest it all, and just use Proton Calendar going forward. So there are different ways that you can clean up that sort of stuff. One thing to keep in mind is that even though companies have collected a lot of information about your past, you can stop them collecting anything about your future. And that data is actually more valuable the more recent it is, right? They want to know what you're feeling right now, not what you felt once 15 years ago. So if you make changes now, that's great. You know, it's not overwhelming like they've already got your data. It's kind of like, you know, when you're in a relationship and your partner knows everything about you and then you break up. It's like, well, they know everything about you. Well, they don't know anything about you anymore. They don't know who you are going forward, what your decisions are and everything. So everyone, I encourage you to break up with data brokers. It's going to be hard, but there are support groups. We'll get through it, I promise.
Thank you.
Yeah. Last question.
So I found how to get money out of the bank just using like a check from Fidelity so then it doesn't raise any flags. How do I get money, cash back in without raising flags or into crypto?
You can't. I'm really sorry. I wish I had better news for you. The traditional financial system, it's just, honestly, it's this awful entrenched surveillance system. The best thing that we can do is support initiatives right now. So there are some different organizations that are actually challenging the constitutionality of the Bank Secrecy Act. Support them. Call your reps. Tell them that you support, you know, challenging this. The Bank Secrecy Act is unconstitutional. We need to support these initiatives because the entire financial system has been hijacked. Now, that is why crypto exists, because it is an alternative system. It's this wonderful agorist phenomenon where you no longer have to, you know, kowtow to the people who are telling you whether you'll have permission to access your own funds. You can use an alternative system and just, you know, skirt that entirely legally as well. Crypto is legal. Remember that. You should exercise your rights and use these tools that give you privacy and freedom and are legal. Now, the thing about crypto and moving money back and forth between these systems, again, these are very controlled bridges. This is a very controlled ecosystem that you're moving in and out of, so you're going to have very limited options. I encourage you to find ways that you can earn crypto so that that money doesn't go into your existing bank account in the first place. So there are different websites, even social media sites, where you can earn crypto. There are different, in your everyday life, you know, maybe you are renting out a room in your house or something. Maybe you accept crypto. Maybe you are selling goods and there's a local market and it's a market where people are crypto friendly. You could sell goods for crypto. Really start to look for ways where you can create a silo and you're no longer using those bridges back and forth so that you bring money into that crypto ecosystem, then you just spend it straight out. You know, you're not moving it back into the traditional financial system. You're just finding ways to spend it directly through some of the tools. But I think we're running out of time now, but I really appreciate you all. If you have questions, come find me. Happy to answer.